Hi everyone, and welcome to the channel. My name is Infantry Pulse, and today we're going to be continuing our skill refinery series with the green units. Now, it's been kind of a second since we've done one of these videos, so just as a reminder, this is where I take a unit that's in the 4-star special pool, that's had their weapon refined already, and I give them a new skill that kind of brings them back into the fold, brings them back into the meta. A lot of these units got refines towards the beginning of the game, and people often clamor for something like a re-refine to help them out and help bring them back into a place where they're more usable. That's all well and good. I don't really foresee that happening, so I think adding something like a skill refinery to the game, where we give these units preferred skills, is maybe something that is more feasible and also just more interesting to me, and I have more fun doing it, so rather than re-refining their weapons all the time. So today we are tackling the green units, and we have got colorless units to go still after that. Make sure to check out the red and blue videos, those have already come up. Without further ado, let's get into our first unit, and that is going to be Minerva. So Minerva has a pretty good stat distribution after her Resplendent. She has good speed, good attack, pretty good defense as well, and then her weapon, a Hot Glare, is actually pretty good. It's a simple effect. It's slaying plus Wodow, right? And that's a very simple effect. It's one that happens fairly commonly. We have one of each color. We have this, we have Shanna's Lance, and we have Nameless Blade. Is that Fur's weapon? But Fur's weapon as well. We have a version of this in every color, right? But I think this is a good, this is a weapon that has internal synergy, right? It's all about getting those special procs to go off more frequently and more powerfully, and those two things combined make it quite a good weapon already. So what she really needs, what all really flyers need, is she needs a good B skill to bring out the best in her and make her shine. So what I've decided to give her is Dragoon Flight. So she is the Red Dragoon, so we already have the Pegasus Flight skill and the Wyvern Flight skill, so this just makes sense. So this asks her to meet a speed check, which is a higher bar than the normal flight skills do. The normal flight skills have you meet a more generous speed check, either within 7 or within 10. This is an actual speed check, so she has to outspeed her opponent, but if she does, she gets the null follow-up effect, as well as the standard flight effect being subtracting attack and defense from the foe based on a differential between speed stats. But what Dragoon Flight does better than the flight skills is that this is an in-combat check rather than a pre-combat check for her. So that means that she can boost her skills up with something like a solo skill, or, you know, like a Swift Sparrow or anything like that. So anything that is boosting her speed stat in combat is going to contribute to Dragoon Flight's debuffing effect, which is very nice for her, for sure. That said, the opponent also then gets their in-combat speed buffs, which can be, you know, a hit or miss kind of thing. But I think that this is overall a definite win for her, and something that a flyer desperately needs a good B skill. If you think about Legendary Ryoma, the refine he got plus the remix he got, that upgrade that he got, that definitely brought him back into the fold a lot more. I think this could do the same for Minerva, because she's actually a pretty good unit. And what you could do with her is use her on something like an ARO build. So with Hot Glare and then Noontime, or if you want to use Brave Lucina, you can actually run Soul here. She has consistent healing, she has very good bulk, and she's getting extra damage on that Noontime or Soul proc. So while, you know, normally people have some opinions about healing specials being better or worse, this is the best of both worlds. She's getting more damage when that special procs, and she's getting healing. So that's really great. Speed Defense Rhine combines well with the speed check she needs to meet for Dragoon Flight. Attack Speed Rhine would also be good if you want to boost up her bulk a little bit more. And then Attack Speed Solo, obviously boosting up her damage as well as her speed to try and meet that speed check for Dragoon Flight. Minerva is a unit I have personally wanted to use like a lot, so I would really love if she got some skills that made her a little bit better. Obviously she can use something like Wyvern Flight, but something like a Dragoon Flight would make her much, much stronger overall, for sure. Next up, we have Flying Nino. So Flying Nino actually got a very good refine, in my opinion. She gets true damage based on her speed, 20% of her speed, which is not the most, damage in the world, but it is true damage, and it's bonus damage on top of whatever she's already dealing. And as a pretty good offensive unit, that's great. And then the Refine gives her Joint Drive attack speed, which is quite good. That's a quite good effect. Joint Drive attack, even by itself, is a good effect, but having Joint Drive attack speed in the weapon makes her even better. It combines well with her flying movement as well, because flyers often hop around, and to hop around you need to be nearby allies, so all of these things combo well to make her kind of an internally synergistic unit for sure, as well as providing some ally support, so that's really nice. So what Nino really needs, though, is the same thing all flyers need, is they need something that the infantry units have over them, and that something for me is, again, null follow-up. So I've decided to give her a skill called Fang's Bond, and that is when she's within 2 spaces of an ally, she gets the null follow-up effect, which is great for her. That means she can actually use that speed against units that might otherwise double her back, or that might prevent her follow-ups, all that kind of stuff. But also, allies within 2 spaces that are from the same title as the unit also gain that null follow effect. So the idea here is that we're working with her origins, her roots in the Black Fangs, to kind of make her a support unit for the Black Fangs as well. So this is very similar to Legendary Byleth's effect, where it's kind of a joint drive null follow-up, but without that speed check that Byleth has, but it's only for units from the same game as Flying Nino from Blazing Blade, right? Yeah, so that's all well and good. The best place to use her, in my opinion, would be Arena, because there are so many armor units in Arena, and armor units tend to mess with follow-up effects because they don't typically have the best speed. So they tend to run things like Bold Fighter, Crafty Fighter, Vengeful Fighter, Wary Fighter, all these kind of things that really mess with follow-ups. Having a drive null follow-up effect is quite good, as we've seen with Legendary Byleth. But also being able to use Nino herself with something like G-Dual Flying is also, you know, quite good. Aerobatics as a B slot is an option. You could also run any other B skill, you know, but there's not a lot of good B skills for range flyers. Guard might be a really good option, truthfully, but yeah, that's definitely an option for her. I think that would really bring her back into the fold and make her a useful Arena support unit, as well as potentially an Aether Ranks defense carry. All these kind of ideas that Nino really needs to take one step up, because her weapon is good. Her weapon is quite good. Her stats are pretty good as well. She's not the oldest of the old units, so something that would bring her back into the fold would be something like Fang's Bond. Next up, we're looking at Female Kana. So Female Kana is a unit with pretty balanced stats across the board. Nothing outstanding, but nothing terrible. Her weapon is actually not bad also. It gives her Spectrum +4 as long as the foe initiates combat, so in enemy phase she always has Spectrum +4, or if the foe has no visible buffs, no buffs from Rally and Home. And then her Refined effect has synergy with that in the fact that it gives her lull attack speed. So it's removing those attack speed buffs, so unless they have a defense res buff, her weapon will also be active in player phase. So Kana is a unit that probably needs a little bit more stats to work, but also needs something to ensure that her weapon is active more often. So what I've decided to give her is a skill called Purifying Counter. So that is a distant counter effect, so that's something she definitely needs because she's sacrificing the opportunity of Lightning Breath. That's an inheritable breath that dragons can get that has distant counter. She's sacrificing that in favor of her preferred weapon. But it also is giving defense res lull. And that, combined with her Refined effect, means that it's neutralizing all the opponent's stat buffs and also giving them -3 to everything. So she's ending up with a 7 stat point swing on both player phase and enemy phase with these combined effects. So, because the opponent's getting -3, she's getting Spectrum +4 to everything. So those two things combined make her a pretty good generalist. She's getting a lot of extra stats compared to her opponent. So what you could use her in is something like a light season carry, something like a null follow-up carry specifically. The problem is she's not going to be hitting super hard, so I would recommend running something like a damaging special like Bonfire, for example, and then running Mystic Boost on the Seal to keep her sustain up. Having null follow-up is super helpful for her. You could also run something like a solo in the seal slot for sure. You could run Null Seed Disrupt on her. Definitely lots of things to do, because basically what she brings to the table is just a ton of stats. She's just going to have a ton of stats with these skills, as well as debuff neutralization for your opponent. Or sorry, buff neutralization for your opponent. She removes any buffs your opponent might have. In Light Season, that's especially good, considering something like Not existing, right? So when Not has buffs, she is going to bonus double off of her weapon, but Kana is going to neutralize those completely, and she has color advantage over Not. So she's definitely would be a pretty good counter to Not, and we're seeing more and more of her, so having a counter to her is quite a good idea for sure. Alright, next up we have Amelia. Amelia is the original Fast Axe Armor. So she has pretty good defenses, but not the best defenses in the world, but what she does have is a speed stat. And so her weapon, Grotto Poleaxe, tries to capitalize on that by boosting her speed and defense as long as she has a bonus active, essentially. Not any bonus, it has to be a Rally or Hone or an extra movement bonus, so it's not the general bonus like we get in modern units. But it does grant her speed defense +5, and it is a slaying axe. So those things are pretty good for her overall. So what Amelia really needs to bring her back into the fold is something like Grotto's Shield. Now, this is very small text, so I'm going to explain it all to you. It looks very Yu-Gi-Oh! Cardy. It's because there are lots of different things to go on here. I try to type it up as much as possible like the game types it up, so there's no confusion. So what this is near save. This is a near save skill. It gives her Spectrum +4, and it gives her Special Acceleration. So it's giving her 4 extra stats across the board, and it's giving her +1 special charge per foe's attack during combat. It's all really good. The thing is, she has to have a bonus active for this to trigger. So she has to have either the extra movement, or she has to have, a buff of some kind. It has that same idea as her weapon, right? Her weapon's giving her +5 speed and defense. This is giving her Spectrum +4 near save, and special cooldown charge +1. If she doesn't have those bonus, she can't activate near save. So there is kind of like a, she has to have the bonuses, right? So that is, you have to keep those bonuses active on her to use her in any kind of effect. Now, obviously, the implication of using any kind of save unit is in a save ball, either on defense or offense. So this is an offense one I've built here, with Slick Fighter and Bracing Stance 3. That could be, any other kind of stance, really. Slick Fighter could also be something else, for sure. The idea here is she's a lot like a green Gwendolyn, except with probably better stats overall. Gwendolyn has a slaying effect and then a special acceleration. Same idea here. Amelia has a slaying effect on her weapon, and she's getting special acceleration from Grotto's Shield, which means every time a unit attacks into her, she's going to retaliate then with a bonfire. And so that's really good. So hitting back with a pretty thick bonfire, especially after the extra stats she's going to get from Grotto's Shield and from Grotto Poleaxe, and then from on this build Bracing Stance, she's going to be hitting very, very hard in retaliation. It would make her a very strong near save unit. Actually, one of the better near save units. The problem is she doesn't have as many extra effects on her weapon. She doesn't have the damage reduction of something like a Gustav or a Brave Edelgard, but she does have more total stats to work with overall, and that kind of balances things out. Being green is not the worst color in the world. It means she has not the best matchup versus something like Legendary Sigurd, but it does give her a good matchup into things like Note and into things like Saros, right? So there's definitely a give and take there. But this is something that I would like to see for Amelia, because I think when she first came out, she was a cool unit because she had that niche of being a fast armor unit, and that's kind of fallen off since we've gotten more and more of those units like that. But I do think that she is a cool unit, and I would like to see her utilized just a little bit more in this fashion. Okay, next up we have we have Deirdre and Julia. So Deirdre and Julia, mother and daughter pair here. We're going to cover them together because they have interchangeable weapons, right? So they can both use Naga, they can both use Divine Naga, so in my mind, they would both get this preferred skill. Now, Naga is kind of, in my opinion, the inferior to Divine Naga. Naga gives you a close counter effect versus dragons, whereas Divine Naga gives you lull the opponent's stats, and then it also gives you Spectrum +3 if you can meet a 3 or more res check against the opponent. So, in my opinion, Divine Naga is almost always the way to go. There's very rare instances where you would want Naga over Divine Naga. Obviously, close counter is a cool effect, especially to have in the weapon, but that's neither here nor there. The point is that Julia and Deirdre are not bad units by any means, and being Dragon Slayers is definitely a good thing for them to have, but they kind of lack in the opportunity cost department versus using other units, especially something like a Fallen Julia, for example, or Legendary Julia, who kind of power creep their original versions. Obviously, those are different colors, so there's different roles to fulfill there. But what I've decided to give these units is a skill that I feel is pretty balanced, but also has a good effect, and that is Naga's Protection. So if you meet a res check versus your opponent, if you have more res than your opponent, it's going to grant you extra defense based on the difference between Julia or Deirdre's res and defense. Basically what it's going to do, it's going to bring your defense up, their defense up, to match their res. So, it also grants guard. It also grants the guard effect, right? So, it's giving you a whole bunch of extra defense, quite a lot of extra defense, honestly. And then it's also giving the inflicts minus special one, inflict special cooldown -1 on the opponent, right? So it's basically, think of it like Sturdy Stance, but on steroids, right? It's a lot extra defense. So if you look at, for example, this Julia build that I've designed as a Null Seed Disruptor for Aether Raid's offense, in my mind, this was meant to be used with a near save unit, but this would be a unit that would be very, very threatening against a lot of incoming ranged threats in the game, right? So she has 51 visible res here. In combat, that's going to boost up to 57 from the solo, and then 60 from Divine Naga. Her defense is going to go up to 34. So she's going to get a total of 26 extra defense from Naga's Protection. Is that right? 26? Did I do that math right? Yes, 26 extra defense from Naga's Protection. That's a ton. That's a ton of extra defense, right? So, as well as providing that guard effect, right? So that makes her a very good tank of enemy units, right? So she's going to really be absorbing a lot of those hits a lot better. It makes her a much better frontliner. Because of that, I've chosen to run Soul because I personally prefer healing specials, but you could run something like Iceberg or even Bonfire to boost her up even more. This is also a plus speed build. You could go with a plus attack build instead to try and secure more of those kills, but this would definitely bring Julia into more of the forefront. She's definitely usable as she is right now, but I think this would push her over the edge to make her more of a meta threat, and that is the goal of these skill refinery videos, right? So that is the video, everyone. I hope you guys all enjoyed watching it. I definitely enjoy making these kind of theory crafts. They're really just fun because, you know, I don't work for IS. I'm not designing any of these things, but I enjoy thinking about the game in this way and trying to bring these older units back into the meta for sure. Let me know what you guys think of the video. Let me know what you guys would have preferred to see, or maybe a unit that was in the green 4-star special pool that you didn't see in the video that you want to see. Comment below for that. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. There's also a link to the Discord down in the description. Lots of great people in the Discord, always talking about Aether Raids and Arena and just Fire Emblem Heroes in general. It's a really good time, really good vibe there for sure. So make sure to swing by and join that as well. And I just want to say again, thanks you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys later. Take care, guys. Bye.